Harley Davidson is in trouble. Big trouble. If you've been paying attention, this didn't come out of nowhere. Harley's been on a slow decline for years, but recently things have hit a breaking point. The biggest issue? A massive disconnect between the company and its core audience. Harley Davidson used to be the brand that made you feel like an outlaw, even if the wildest thing you ever did was go 5 over the speed limit. But somewhere along the way, they lost the plot. Instead of refining what made Harleys legendary, big bad cruisers with that unmistakable rumble, they tried to chase trends, and that's how we ended up with a Livewire, an electric bike that absolutely nobody asked for. Their core riders weren't interested, and the new crowd who was interested in electric bikes, yeah, they were not looking at Harley. It's like watching your grandpa try to become an influencer. Painful. The price problem. Then we've got the elephant in the room. Pricing. Once upon a time, owning a Harley meant you were part of an exclusive club. But now, the only exclusivity comes from the fact that nobody under 40 can afford one. Harley's pricing itself out of reach, while Indian, Honda, and Royal Enfield are over here making killer bikes for way less. If you can get a solid cruiser that does everything a Harley does without having to sell a kidney, why wouldn't you? Buying a motorcycle used to be simple. You start with an entry-level bike, work your way up, and eventually get that dream ride. But now, forget about it. Prices have shot up 30 to 40%, making even so-called budget bikes feel like luxury purchases. A Harley Davidson Street Glide that was 19 grand in 2019, now it's going for over 25 Gs. And even mid-range bikes like the Honda Rebel 500 and Yamaha MT-07 have gone up by thousands. It's ridiculous. Dealerships will tell you, oh, it's supply chain issues, production costs, inflation. Yeah, okay, but let's be real. The real reason is pure greed. When demand exploded in 2020, manufacturers and dealers cranked up the prices thinking people would just keep handing over cash. And for a while, they did. But now inflation is through the roof, the cost of living is insane, and people are tightening their wallets. Buyers aren't falling for it anymore. They're looking at these jacked up prices and saying, nah, I'll pass. And here's the kicker. So many people impulse bought motorcycles during the pandemic because interest rates were low and those stimulus checks were rolling in. Now reality's hitting. Owning a motorcycle is not cheap. Maintenance, insurance, gear, it all adds up. And now people are scrambling to sell their bikes. But guess what? The market's flooded. Nobody wants to pay inflated prices and values are tanking hard. It is a total mess. High interest rates are making motorcycle ownership nearly impossible. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but if you tried to get a loan lately, you know it's rough out there. Interest rates are sky high, and if you somehow managed to get approved, congratulations, you just signed up for some serious financial pain. Remember when getting a loan was easy? It felt like banks were practically begging you to take their money and buy a bike. Those days, long gone. The market has changed, and not in a good way. Let's say you do get lucky and land a loan. You're eyeing a $20,000 bike at 12% interest over 6 years. That's around $400 a month, and that's before you even think about insurance, gas, and maintenance. So how do you tell a new rider, someone who's just excited to get into biking, that they have to drop that much cash every single month? What's their option? Walk away? Neglecting the classics. And here's where they really shot themselves in the foot. Harley built its empire on heavyweight cruisers and touring bikes, and instead of doubling down and making those better, they started chasing every new trend like a lost puppy. Meanwhile, Indian Motorcycles was busy doing what Harley should have been doing, making bikes that feel like a modern take on the classics. So while Harley was out there trying to reinvent itself, Indian just walked in and stole their lunch money. For decades, Harley Davidson was the brand of freedom, rebellion, and raw American horsepower. Then, somewhere along the line, corporate decision-making thought it'd be a good idea to shift gears literally. They started pushing electric motorcycles, leaned heavily into corporate sustainability, and prioritized branding that felt more at home in a boardroom than on the open road. Naturally, longtime Harley riders did not take this well. Many saw it as a complete betrayal of what made Harley special in the first place. Instead of listening to their loyal customer base, Harley doubles down, embraces diversity initiatives and modern branding efforts that alienated the exact people who built their reputation. The CEO's response. After months of backlash, Jochen Zeitz finally spoke up. The company issued a statement walking back some of the most controversial moves, claiming they'd refocus on their traditional values and put their core audience first. The message ended with a familiar phrase, "United we ride." But the problem? It felt hollow. Riders weren't convinced. The same company that turned its back on them was now asking them for trust without making any real changes. While the statement distanced Harley from certain corporate initiatives, it didn't erase the fact that they were still pushing electric motorcycles, still prioritizing sustainability, and still feeling more like a Fortune 500 company than a legendary motorcycle brand. The aftermath. If Harley thought this statement would calm the storm, they were wrong. Riders continued calling for boycotts, and dealerships across the country felt the heat. Foot traffic dropped, sales slowed, and longtime Harley dealers, some of whom had been in business for decades, found themselves slashing prices just to move inventory. Even die-hard Harley fans started looking elsewhere. Indian Motorcycles, with its classic cruiser designs and deep respect for motorcycle heritage, became an attractive alternative. Others turned to Japanese brands like Yamaha and Honda, which offered high-performance cruisers at more competitive prices without all the corporate baggage. And that's the real danger here. Harley's brand was built on loyalty, lifelong riders who wouldn't even consider another bike. But once that trust is broken, it's hard to get it back. The company can issue all the statements it wants, but until riders see real change, the damage is done. A lesson from Ducati. If Harley wants to fix this mess, they should take a page out of Ducati's playbook. Ducati had its own struggles, high maintenance costs, reliability issues, and a reputation that scared off casual riders. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's Harley right now. But Ducati turned it around by leaning into their heritage while actually improving their bikes. They didn't just rely on nostalgia, they backed it up with performance. They also expanded their lineup to attract younger riders without abandoning roots. Ducati's Scrambler brought in a whole new crowd while still feeling like a Ducati. Harley? They just kept missing the mark, either making bikes that are too expensive, too removed from their legacy, or just straight up unnecessary. The road to redemption. So, is Harley Davidson doomed? Not necessarily, but they need to wake up fast. First, they have to actually listen to their riders. That means bringing manufacturing back home, keeping their classic DNA intact, and making sure every new Harley feels like a Harley. Then they gotta fix their pricing. If they want younger riders in the mix, they need bikes that are actually within reach. Other brands have figured this out. Harley needs to do the same. Innovation is great, but it's gotta be done right. Instead of going all in on electric, Harley should focus on refining what they already do best. That means improving performance, modernizing their lineup without alienating their core riders, and making sure every new bike feels like a natural evolution, not a forced pivot. And finally, they need to fix their branding. Right now, it feels like they're trying to be something they're not. Harley was never about corporate messaging and buzzwords. It was about the experience. If they can get back to that, they might still have a shot. Indian Motorcycles, once a shadow of Harley, is now a serious contender. While Harley stumbled through corporate missteps and identity crises, Indian stuck to what works: classic styling and modern engineering. When Polaris revived Indian back in 2011, they focused on reliability, performance, and giving riders what they actually wanted. Meanwhile, Harley toyed with electric bikes and branding shifts that alienated its own fanbase. The Indian Challenger, Scout, and Chief models have gained traction because they offer everything Harley riders used to love: power, style, and quality without the baggage. The Thunderstroke and Power Plus engines deliver real performance, their pricing's competitive, and they built a reputation for reliability. If Harley wants to win back riders, it needs to stop chasing trends and start listening. The rise of Triumph, Royal Enfield, and BMW. It's not just Indian. European brands like Triumph, Royal Enfield, and BMW have all found a foothold in the American market. Harley used to own the cruiser space, but now these brands are offering heritage-inspired bikes with fewer reliability issues and a better price point. Triumph's Bonneville series nails the retro aesthetic without the maintenance headaches. Royal Enfield's Meteor 350 and Interceptor 650 give riders a classic experience at a fraction of Harley's price. BMW entered the cruiser game with the R18, directly challenging Harley's touring models, and it worked. These brands are proving that riders will abandon ship if a better deal's on the table. Japan's takeover. If you thought Harley's only problem was high-end competition, think again. Japanese manufacturers Honda, Kawasaki, and Yamaha are thriving in the American market. While Harley wrestled with its identity, these brands did what they always do: build reliable, high-performance motorcycles at a reasonable price. Honda's Goldwing crushes Harley's touring models in comfort and technology. The Rebel series offers beginner-friendly cruisers that don't actually break the bank. Kawasaki's Vulcan lineup and Yamaha's Bolt and VMAX provide classic styling with performance and low maintenance. Harley isn't just competing with these brands, it's losing to them because they offer better value. Harley's biggest misstep: the electric gamble. And then there's the live wire. Harley's attempt at an electric motorcycle could have been revolutionary. Instead, it felt like a desperate bid to stay relevant. Harley's core audience didn't want an electric bike, and the riders who did weren't looking at Harley. The result, a flop so big they had to spin it off into a separate brand just to salvage it. Instead of strengthening its foundation, Harley gambled on a niche product while alienating its core riders. Meanwhile, brands like Zero and Energetica took the lead into the electric motorcycling space. Harley could have been refining its cruisers, but instead it wasted time and resources chasing a market that wasn't theirs to begin with. Live wire disaster. Harley's core riders weren't looking for an electric bike. These are people who live for that signature Harley rumble, the unmistakable feel of a V-twin engine, and the raw rebellious spirit that comes with it. And then Harley rolled out the Livewire, a silent, futuristic-looking machine that cost nearly 30 Gs. It didn't just miss the mark, it was an insult to Harley's most loyal customers. Right from the start, the Livewire faced an uphill battle. It wasn't just the hardcore Harley faithful who rejected it. New riders weren't interested either. Harley had hoped to attract a younger, eco-conscious crowd, but let's be real, those riders were already looking at brands like Zero or cheaper, more practical electric alternatives. The Livewire sat in this weird middle ground where it didn't appeal to traditionalists or new riders. And then came the performance issues, long charging times, a limited range, and high maintenance costs. For a brand that built its reputation on long-distance touring and road trips, this was a disaster. Livewire wasn't just an electric motorcycle, it was a completely impractical one for the type of riding Harley customers actually do. Desperate to save face, Harley did what any struggling company does. It pivoted. They spun off Livewire as its own separate brand, essentially trying to distance themselves from their own failure. But this move only frustrated riders even more. Instead of fixing the issues with the bike or making meaningful changes to win back their audience, Harley looked at it like it was chasing electric trends at the expense of its loyal fan base. The result? Abysmal sales, a confused brand identity, and a growing sense that Harley Davidson had lost its way. While competitors like Indian, Honda, and Triumph were doubling down on their strengths, Harley was throwing Hail Marys with tech that its audience didn't want. But here's the real problem. Livewire is just a symptom of a much bigger issue. Harley's struggle isn't just about electric bikes, it's about a brand that's lost touch with its riders. The company's been struggling with American manufacturing costs, an aging customer base, and an inability to attract new generations of riders. While the Livewire failure is a glaring example of mismanagement, it's not the only reason Harley's in trouble. Biggest betrayal: outsourcing. Harley Davidson used to be the last bastion of all American motorcycles. That was their whole thing. The brand sold itself on rough-and-tumble, red-blooded American dreams on two wheels. And yet, today, an increasing number of Harley's parts, the engines, transmissions, electronics, aren't even made in the US anymore. Instead, they're coming from overseas. Loyal customers noticed this, and they were not happy. You see, it's one thing to innovate, but it's another to completely abandon your roots. When Harley started outsourcing, it didn't just hurt their image, it hurt real people. Factory closures across the US led to massive layoffs, leaving whole communities scrambled. Towns that relied on Harley for jobs suddenly found themselves struggling, and it's not just the factories. Harley dealerships across the country are feeling the squeeze too. Foot traffic's down, longtime customers are jumping ship, and younger riders are just not interested. And here's the kicker. While Harley is fumbling around trying to figure out who they are, other brands have stepped in and thrived. Take Indian Motorcycles, for example. Indian pulled off what Harley couldn't. They managed to stay true to their heritage while still embracing modern technology. And instead of alienating their customer base, they gave them what they wanted, the classic cruiser look with cutting-edge performance. Harley, on the other hand, spent years teetering between trying to be cool and trying to be modern, and in the process, they lost their path. Then you've got Royal Enfield, a brand that leaned hard into vintage aesthetics while quietly modernizing their engineering. It's a strategy that worked. They managed to capture the nostalgia crowd while bringing in new riders. Meanwhile, Japanese brands like Honda and Kawasaki continue to dominate, simply by being affordable and reliable. Harley could have taken a page out of that book, offering an entry-level, affordable, and still authentic motorcycle, but instead, they priced themselves out of reach for the younger customers. And let's talk about Harley's attempt to chase trends. Instead of focusing on their strengths, V-twin engines, classic cruiser styling, and a robust dealership network, they've pivoted towards things like electric motorcycles and corporate activism. Now, sure, electric bikes might be the future, but let's be real. When you think of a Harley, you don't think of a silent battery-powered machine. You think of a big, loud, growling beast of a bike, and that's exactly the problem. Harley tried to follow trends instead of setting them. The lesson here is pretty clear. The brands that found a way to honor their past while adapting to the present have thrived. Harley, on the other hand, have been floundering. It's been a long, slow decline, and unless they figure out how to reconnect with their roots without ignoring modern demands, the future is not looking too bright.